Let me tell you a story about bravery, fortitude, and survival. And being abducted by pirates, watching your friend get burned at the stake, surviving a bear attack, and getting mercilessly exploited by Hollywood for money. No, these aren't separate stories. This all happened to one man. This is the true story of Hugh Glass. Glass was born in Pennsylvania on or around 1783 and grew up to become a sailor. One day, out at sea, the ship he was on was attacked by pirates and the whole crew was killed except for Glass. He was given a choice: die with his crewmates or join the pirates. It was a twisted ultimatum, but naturally, in order to survive, he joined them. He ran with the pirates for the next few years before escaping by jumping off the ship and swimming to shore at what would eventually become Texas. However, if you're wise by now, you would know that this story is just beginning. The Karankawa Indians patrolled these shores. Hugh Glass desperately wanted to avoid them because it was rumored that the tribe was cannibalistic. Fearing the worst, he successfully managed to navigate through the Karankawa territory onto Kansas. He escaped with another runaway pirate and things seemed to be looking up. However, upon arriving, the two men were captured by a tribe called the Pawnee. This tribe, thankfully, wasn't cannibalistic. However, they did believe in human ritualistic sacrifice. Yay. One step forward, two steps back, I guess. It was here where Glass had to watch his friend be impaled with pine needles and burned at the stake. This was particularly effective because pine sap is notably a very flammable substance, so you can pretty much imagine how this must have looked. Hugh was next in line, but he managed to save himself by presenting the Pawnee with a gift. What he offered them was a substance called vermilion. It is a bright red substance that could have been used as war paint. And just like that, from one moment to the next, he went from certain doom to actually having his gift accepted by the tribe. So much so that they actually made him a member. He spent 2 years here and learned a great many things from the tribe. Most people think he married one of the Pawnee women and actually had a son, but this is false, and we'll talk more about that later. After this time in his life, he journeyed to St. Louis to become a mountain man and fur trader. His only job was to live off the land, hunting animals and selling pelts with 100 other men. Life was good, that is, until they ran into another Native American tribe called the Ree. The majority of Glass's party were unfortunately killed by this tribe. In response, and to make matters worse, the trappers lit the Ree village on fire. This was a decision that would not be regretted and had zero consequences at all. After this, the mountain men were on the run in the woods when Glass accidentally stumbled upon a bear's nest. Yeah, Hugh wasn't exactly a lucky man, to say the least. The fact that Hugh didn't die from this encounter is nothing short of a miracle. He was brutally mauled and very close to death. The bear tore chunks of skin off his body and threw him around like a rag doll. By the time Hugh's men got to him, the damage had already been done. His fellow mountain men tried to bandage him up and carry him through the woods, but Glass's fate was looking pretty grim. The leader of the group decided to leave him behind due to the fact that the Ree Indians were still tracking them through the woods, and Hugh would only slow them down. 2 men were ordered to stay with him until he died, one named Fitzgerald and the other named Bridger. However, Bridger was just a teen and kinda just did whatever he was told. But anyways, the 2 men were expecting him to be dead by morning. But surprisingly, the absolute legend ended up surviving 5 days and still wasn't dead. Granted, he was still reduced to nothing but a meat sack with a pulse, but the pulse was there nonetheless. However, unfortunately, with each passing day, the Ree got closer and closer to Glass's position. At this point, the 2 men had to make a very hard decision. They couldn't just carry Glass out of the forest by themselves, along with all their equipment. So they decided to take Hugh's weapon and his provisions and left him to die. The tribe was closing in fast, and they figured Glass wouldn't survive much longer anyway, so they dropped him off near a creek and left. He was able to crawl to the stream for water and was luckily able to get food from a tree that was just within reach. Somehow, in this moment, he found the resolve deep inside of him to continue on. However, there was a problem. So Glass did the unthinkable. he started to crawl. He only had one thing on his mind: revenge against the men who left him there to die. Another small problem: civilization was hundreds of miles away. From his time living with the Pawnee, he was able to use what they taught him to survive. And at one crucial moment during his struggle, he came across a small pack of wolves eating a freshly killed buffalo. He waited there until the wolves had taken their fill, then crawled over to the carcass himself to have some of the meat. This helped him gain much of his strength back, and without this moment he wouldn't have survived. As he crawled, maggots began to gnaw away at his infected, rotting flesh. And he actually allowed this to happen because it helped stave off infection, sickness, and death. And eventually, he was even able to walk again. Still under the weather, but his condition improved. It took 6 grueling weeks, but he finally made it back to civilization. But Glass didn't even stop to rest. He had his revenge to get. So he immediately began the hunt for those men. After just a few short days of being with civilization, he caught wind of another expedition heading out towards Fort Henry, the very place where the crew of mountain men had traveled to. He knew that there was a pretty good chance that they would still be there, so he signed up immediately. On his way there, the group he was traveling with was slaughtered by natives, and he himself had a run-in with them as well. He would have been killed if it weren't for another rival tribe that came to rescue Glass. In total, the journey to Fort Henry took 4 months, but he finally made it. He was ready to exact his revenge. He was expecting an epic showdown, but when he arrived, he only found Bridger, who pleaded for his life. Glass took pity on the boy and decided that Bridger was just a kid, and the real blame lies with Fitzgerald. Turns out, Fitzgerald joined the army and was stationed at yet another fort very far away. Long story short, it took a year to finally catch up to him, and when he did, he couldn't even kill him. See, as Glass's gun was pointed right at Fitzgerald's head, another soldier called out. Murdering a member of the US military was a capital offense, and you would be hanged on the spot. So, with much pain and anger in his heart, he lowered his weapon, and that was the end of it. Or was it? Remember earlier about how I said many people thought Hugh Glass took a Pawnee wife and had a son? Well, the reason so many people thought this was because Hollywood swooped in and made a based on true events movie about him. Of course, like 85% of the movie was historically inaccurate, so the end was never really the end because Hollywood unfortunately came around hundreds of years later and exploited his hardship for profit. But wait. Isn't that what I'm doing right now?